cooling off did mean that we saw a big rally in tech. That, however, is taking it on the nose this morning. NASDAQ futures down some 1.4% after disappointing earnings. We're going to get to that in just a bit. But I should note, Meta did not qualify as that group of big tech that had disappointing earnings, seeing one of its biggest rally in decades, thanks to what Zuckerberg called the year of efficiency for Meta. Let's get to some of those top stories and our reporters from around the world on the deepening Adani stock market rout to tech stocks tumbling and what we can expect from the jobs report later today. Let's start with Adani, and the rout has erased half of the group's market cap value since the Hindenburg report, and its shares are poised for a record drop in this specific session. Joining us now is our senior editor in India, Menka Doshi. Menka, another day of selling. What's the latest, and what is the risk that we're going to get some sort of contagion that spreads to other areas?
Well, as you've pointed out, we've seen continuous declines in the Adani Group company shares through the course of this morning. This despite some expecting that there might be some stemming to that decline, given that the stock exchanges in India had applied surveillance measures to many of those stocks, and the implications of some of those surveillance measures is to curb speculative trading. And we point out here that when those stocks were on a rapid rise in the course of the last 3 years, similar surveillance measures were imposed on them at that point in time as well, but they don't seem to be helping today. A variety of different stories in the works here with regards to Adani. So I know that globally, financial institutions, investors are watching to see how global indices deal with Adani's, in the specific Adani stock inclusions in those indices, and whether they're likely to review them. I'm referring to MSCI. We're waiting to see if there's any news that emanates from there. As you know, yesterday, an Adani Group company did meet with certain coupon payments. That seems to have given some respite to many of its international bonds, but that could be temporary. Again, a situation to watch very closely. Banks and financial institutions across the world are, are reviewing their exposure to Adani, including here in India, to see if there are any red flags that go through, and if they need to be cautious about repayments over the course of the next several weeks and months.
Menka, you mentioned perhaps some of the attempted curbs against speculation, but what about further reaction from the government? Could we see Modi step in and try to offer some kind of support?
That seems very unlikely, given what we've seen happen over the course of the last few days. Opposition leaders in India have been attempting to raise this issue. Today, we saw Parliament adjourn for a second time as opposition leaders sought to bring the issue to table, and the government refused to address it. We've had a couple of ministers speak to Bloomberg over the course of the last 2 days, and their reactions seem to shrug off the large systemic or economic impact of this Adani episode. So they seem to suggest as if, yes, it's something going on with the private sector entity, but it's unlikely to have any large economic or systemic impact. Those are the only words we've gotten from the Indian government so far. The regulators have also been silent. So as yet, we haven't heard from any of these three parties. We're watching closely.
Okay, Menka, thank you for watching closely for us. That's our senior editor in India, Menka Doshi. Now, let's talk tech, and tech shares slid in the late trade after Apple, Amazon, Alphabet all reported downbeat earnings. The results show an economic slowdown that is throttling demand, at least for electronics, e-commerce, cloud computing, and digital advertising. Joining us now is Bloomberg's tech reporter, Aggie Cantrill. Aggie, I'm kind of sad Manus isn't here this morning, because earlier this week I said to him it would be earnings that stopped the tech rally, not the Fed. I just wanted to take a victory lap, so apologies for doing that with you. But I mean, given that, should we all have seen Apple's revenue drop coming?
We'll have to tell Manus that was the takeaway. Essentially, it was the earnings. But this, when it comes to Apple, it is actually something that we should have seen coming. We have seen that they have essentially said now that they are not immune to the economic headwinds that we're seeing across the market. But to look at Apple specifically, we're seeing a company that has had to already point out that they have been having real issues, especially when it comes to their supply chain, especially when it comes to their reliance on China within that supply chain. And essentially, without being able to bring some of the products to market in the US and in Europe for their consumers ahead of the holiday season, they saw a significant drop in revenues for a quarter that is incredibly crucial to the company, as people tend to buy their products over the Christmas and holiday period.
Talk to me also about the two other A starting tech names. Alphabet, Amazon also crushed after hours. What happened with those earnings, Aggie? What was your takeaway?
The big takeaway, I think, with both of these companies is that they have both been pushing for efficiency. Both of these companies have said that they have done these job cuts, that's something that they're committed to going forward. But also to take away from Alphabet specifically, you're seeing a huge concern around their digital ads revenue. And then when it comes to Amazon, yes, people flock to Amazon for cheaper deals, but it's also part of a consumer sentiment story. And if you're seeing that there is an issue around the consumer sentiment, then that will be impacting a company that still has a huge portion in the retail business. And also, we saw as they shift towards the cloud and they focus on AWS, we saw there was a slowdown in that sector as well. So across the board, it seems that big tech isn't immune to broader macroeconomic headwinds.
Aggie, thank you so much, and thanks for humoring my gloating. Bloomberg's Aggie Cantrill there on the tech earnings.